Lessons from history. 2017, a very significant year. 50 years after the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967, 100 years after the Balfour Declaration in 1917. But 120 years after this chap, Theodore Herzl, held the first Zionist Congress in in Basel. He wrote Die Judenstadt, the Jewish state. We hear so much on the news about the Jewish state. You think, well, what was so amazing about having a congress of world Zionist leaders? Well, it was the first congress, number one, and for 1900 years, the Jews had been despised as a wandering people by Christians wandering under judgment, by others in the West as a great threat because of their business acumen. But there was no concept of returning to the land of Israel. Well, Herzl, after he'd experienced the shock and shame of the Dreyfus trial in France, he was a secular Jew who was not religious. He suddenly realized, where is all this hatred coming from? How can the Jews survive in Europe unless, well, they can't survive in Europe, so there needs to be a haven for them, a place of safety free from anti-Semitism. So he worked hard. He was a journalist, and he drew together these leaders in Basel. And I want to just read something he said after he left this first Congress. Bear in mind, there's no state of Israel. There's nothing on the horizon. There's no knowledge of the terrible times that are to come. And he wrote this: "Were I to sum up the Basel Congress in a word, which I shall guard against pronouncing publicly, it would be this: at Basel, I founded the Jewish state. If I said this out loudly, I would be answered by universal laughter. Perhaps in 5 years, certainly in 50, everyone will know it." It's remarkable, this chap. I mean, he looks like an Old Testament prophet. It's amazing that he pronounced a prophecy. He wasn't to know of the horrors that were ahead. He wasn't even at that time to know about the biblical prophecies, believe it or not. And some deride the whole thing as some secular experiment. But the remarkable thing is, it was the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And when he met a chap called William Heckler, who was moved in the high society circles, he was a reverend, a minister, he for the first time realized that there's another whole dimension to what was taking place and what he had been involved in. Scripture said God rules and reigns in the affairs of men. God used Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't exactly a fervent believer, although his heart was changed later on. But I want to read, it's quite touching, when Herzl met Heckler. And it just says this: "As he slowly mounted 4 flights of stairs, he heard an organ. The staircase opened on a sunlit room lined from floor to ceiling with Bibles. Hardly had Herzl glanced at these treasures than his host extended a military staff map of Palestine on the carpet. He then pointed with prophetic finger at Bethel, the site, according to his calculations, of the new temple." Now, the point is, people laugh at us Christians who look at the biblical prophecies. Well, the reality is 1/4 of the Bible is prophetic or predictive. The whole authenticity of the Bible hinges on the prophecies. Jesus said Jerusalem would be trodden down under the foot of the Gentiles until, in other words, it's time limited, this treading down, until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Something started, was triggered by Herzl, which went on to 1917 to 1947, 50 years after 1897, right up to our present day. It's amazing in our time. A land was born in one day in 1947.